in Rome, where Italian lawmakers are due to be addressed by President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. Mr. Zelensky has addressed other parliaments from various other countries recently, including that of Canada, Germany, the UK, the US, and as well as the European Parliament itself. Italian lawmakers from both the Chamber of Deputies, the lower house, and the Senate of the Republic are here in session to hear Mr. Zelensky's address. Let's listen in.
Cari colleghi e care colleghe.
Dear colleagues,
Signor Presidente del Consiglio, saluto il Presidente dell'Ucraina.
President of the Council,
Ringrazio a nome dell'intero Parlamento italiano.
I welcome the President of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky, and I thank him of all in the name of the Italian Parliament.
Per aver accolto l'invito a questo incontro, nonostante la difficilissima situazione a cui deve far fronte il suo Paese.
I thank him for coming and answering our invitation.
Inusuale, che esprime bene l'eccezionalità del momento storico che stiamo vivendo. Intendiamo così testimoniare.
This is a very special circumstance and an historic moment. We want to express, and with our solemnity, the salute of the Italian people to Ukraine and its people, due to the attack by the Russian Federation on Ukraine. The Italian Parliament, some days after the beginning of hostilities, has agreed a resolution to condemn the attack by Russia and ask for the immediate end to hostilities, and inviting the adoption of measures to help the situation from a humanitarian point of view. Now, the President, Mr. Zelensky, will listen to our ideas about the situation and our initiatives to establish peace in Ukraine. Now, the President of the Senate expresses the feelings of admiration for the courage of the Ukrainian people and the participation of the pain of the whole of the community that is the victim of a nonsensical war that has affected kids, children, and is pushing thousands of refugees to go through humanitarian corridors. Italy has opened its doors to Ukraine, and we are welcoming people taking sides with the people of Ukraine. We are aligned with the objectives of the European Union in taking people. We rely on the efficiency of international support to your country, and we encourage the efforts of diplomacy as the only way of getting out of this conflict.
Favorita anche dalle occasioni di incontro come quella odierna, possa consentire all'Ucraina di ritrovare al più presto.
And diplomatic solutions and the meetings like today will help Ukraine to find peace and freedom in the future. Now we welcome the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Egregi signori Presidenti delle Camere, egregio signor Primo Ministro Draghi, signore e signori senatori, deputati, caro popolo italiano. Oggi ho parlato con la Sua Santità Papa Francesco e lui ha detto
MEPs and the Italian people, I've spoke with the Pope, and he's expressed the desire for peace and defending yourself.
difendono la propria patria, ognuno la difende. E ho risposto, il nostro popolo
I answered,
l'esercito.
our people
L'esercito, quando ha visto
have become
male, porta con sé
the army
panico.
defending us now.
Devastazione lascia dopo di sé, e quanto spargimento di sangue.
And the army that is facing this enemy and defending our country,
Ho parlato durante un incontro a Firenze in una decina di europei.
1 week ago, I spoke during our meeting in Florence
Tutti gli italiani e tutti gli europei
with lots of other European cities,
79
and I've asked all Italians and other Europeans to remember the number 79,
ancora
which is the number of children which have been killed.
questa
And now that number is 117 children.
procrastinazione con la pressione sulla Russia.
This is the price of the procrastination, of pressure on Russia to stop this war.
Decine di migliaia,
There are thousands of injured people,
centinaia di
tens of thousands of destroyed families,
il loro futuro.
and hundreds of thousands of lives ultimately destroyed and abandoned houses.
Ieri delle città,
All of this has been started by one single person. In areas of the cities, they bury dead people.
2022, e noi sappiamo che ogni giorno di guerra
And this is all happening in 2022.
В окупованих районах ховають убиті родини прямо у дворах багатоповерхівок, у парках, у братських могилах. Це відбувається
Civilians are buried just in the parks, in the streets. It's happening in 2022.
забере ще життя наших.
We know that each day of the war will take more lives, our children.
Російське вторгнення ще зруйнує
171 is not the final toll. Russian aggression will continue, unfortunately.
не припиняють вбивати українські міста.
Russian artillery missiles are not stopping to destroying Ukrainian cities.
Наші міста
Some cities like Mariupol, as you've heard, have been completely destroyed.
приблизно як
This city had around 500,000 people living there before. This is close to what you have in Genoa in Italy.
нічого немає.
And now in Mariupol, there's nothing but ruins. Just imagine a completely destroyed Genoa after 3 weeks of blockade and bombardment, which hasn't stopped for a minute.
Ваші прекрасні
Imagine a destroyed Genoa where people are trying to escape by cars, by buses, by foot, just trying to get to safety.
з нашої міцної столиці, з міста, яке має для нашого регіону
And from Kyiv, from our strong capital, that has an importance for us, just like you have an importance for Rome.
великого народу, а зараз ми на межі.
From Kyiv, there was a countdown of the big nations, and now we're on the edge of survival. Kyiv has been through harsh wars through its history. After all of the victims and sacrifice, it deserves to live in peace, just as the same as Rome deserves to live in eternal peace, or any other city in this world. Unfortunately, this is not the case.
Б'ють ракети під Києвом у сусідніх
The bombs are falling every day. These attacks are happening in Kyiv and around the towns in Kyiv. Russian troops around Kyiv are killing and torturing.
дітей руйнують і грабують. Окупанти на вантажівках вивозять
They're torturing and kidnapping children. They're stealing what we have. They're robbing everything. This is what happened in Europe last time due to the Nazis when they were occupying other countries.
навіть море на підходах до наших портів. І тепер це загрожує сусіднім берегам.
Russia has now managed to mine the cities on the sea near our ports. This is a threat due to other countries because they can't travel in these seas anymore.
Забезпечити мир. Це війна, яка
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to do everything you can do now to secure peace and stop the war that Russia has been preparing for a long while. Just one person has been preparing this for 10 or 20 years. Selling oil and gas and spending that money on preparing on war, not just against Ukraine, but their target is ultimately Europe. control over your politics. This is the target, not just Ukraine as a target. The values that we share, that Ukraine shares with you. Ukraine, for Russia, is the gateway to Europe. They want to get through the gate and they should not be able to get through this gate.
Ви цього потребували. Ми направили своїх лікарів, італійці, одним із перших прийшли на допомогу.
We helped you. We sent doctors and medical staff to Italy to help you during the pandemic.
Щиро підтримали.
You supported us,
Взамін. Ви допомагаєте нам і зараз.
and you never really asked anything in response. We do appreciate this. But the invasion doesn't stop. It's 27 days now of war, and more needs to be done. More sanctions, more pressures.
Десь у Лівії або Сирії,
We have to find non-military reserves,
щоб та сама одна
and we have to make them search for peace.
наслідки
We need that one person to search for peace. The consequences of that war are being felt in other parts of the world, not even just Europe.
для різних
The damage will be ultimately starvation, which will be the reality for many.
експортерів продовольства. Але
Ukraine has been one of the biggest exporters of food and materials, but now how can we grow a harvest under artillery and bombings by the enemy? The enemy is deliberately ruining our fields. We don't know what sort of harvest we're going to have and what we're going to be able to export when our ports are blocked and wheat and other foodstuffs which are needed by various other countries, including for your neighbors. Prices are already going up, and therefore how many millions of people will need help?
пані та панове, італійські народи, ви добре знаєте українців.
Ladies and gentlemen, Italian people, you know Ukrainians very well. Our people never really wanted this war. The Ukrainian nation is as European as you are. You know who brought the war to Ukraine. You know them very well. You know who are making orders who are to keep going on with the war, who want to attack. Almost all of them are using Italy as a place for holidays. Don't be a resort for murderers. Block all of the real estate, all of their yachts, all of their bank accounts. Freeze all of their assets. Let them use their influence, but only for peace. So one day they have the opportunity to go back to Italy. Support more sanctions on Russia, full embargo on trade, including that for oil. The ban of Russian ships to enter the ports. They must feel a price for their invasion and their mining of the sea. There should be no exceptions about sanctions for any Russian bank. Don't allow the food supply crisis to help us stop the killing, stop the murderers, and save Ukrainian families. This war must end as soon as possible. We have to get the enemy troops out of Ukraine. We have to demine the seas. We have to rebuild Ukraine after this war. Together with Italy, together with the whole of Europe, together with the European Union. In the past, before I used to be in Italy quite a lot of time. It's a wonderful country. I really appreciate your warm welcome that you've given me and your sincerity, your emotions. And ultimately, I know that families and children, and you have wonderful families and children. I saw what life means to you, and I want to thank on behalf of Ukrainians to your family, especially for those who have been fleeing the war. Over 70,000 people have come to Italy and had to unfortunately flee. 25,000 children even. Many of them have been welcomed by Italian families.
якого значить
Even some of you parliamentarians have welcomed in Ukrainians.
десятки українських
The first Ukrainian child was born in Italy from a refugee after fleeing.
дуже вдячні. І чекаємо, коли вони зможуть знов повернутися.
Many of our people, our refugees, are receiving medical treatment. We're very grateful for this, and we're waiting for the moment that they can return back to Ukraine, to a peaceful Ukraine. And with this, you can definitely help us.
Білі допомагаєте щиро від серця.
From the first day of this war, you've shared our pain and you've helped us from your heart. Ukrainians will always remember this.
Повинна зупинити
We will always remember your warmth and your strength to stop just one person. Only one person.
слава Україні, грація.
For millions to ultimately survive. Glory to Ukraine. So as we've been hearing there, if you're just joining us now, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine has been addressing the Italian Parliament. Mr. Zelensky thanked Italy for its help in receiving refugees and its help within a wider European framework of applying pressure on Russia during this war. To go further and impose more sanctions on Russia, especially on the elites that use Italy as a holidaying destination and often park various things like yachts in Italian ports. He also said that Italy and the rest of the European Union must go further in banning all Russian banks, sanctioning all Russian banks, banning all Russian vessels from Italian ports. And now the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi is set to address the Italian Parliament.
Presidente Zelensky, Presidente Casellati,
Dear President Zelensky,
caro ambasciatore dell'Ucraina,
dear
senatori e
Ukrainian ambassador,
deputate e deputati,
senators,
a nome del governo
and Italian members of Parliament,
voglio
in the name of my
ringraziare
government,
Zelensky per la sua straordinaria testimonianza.
I want to thank President Zelensky for his extraordinary witness and statement to this Parliament.
Dall'inizio della guerra l'Italia ha ammirato
Since the beginning of the war,
la determinazione
Italy has admired the courage and the determination, the sense of motherland of President Zelensky of Ukraine and of the Ukrainian citizens.
lei ha detto.
Your people have become your army, according to you.
Si è scontrata
The arrogance of the Russian government has clashed with the dignity of your people, the Ukrainian people.
di Mosca, impone costi altissimi
This is stopping Moscow's expansionism and ultimately is inflicting a very high cost to the invaders.
e di tutti i luoghi su cui si abbatte
The resistance of Kharkiv, Odessa, and other places where the atrocities of President Putin are hitting are full of heroism.
oggi l'Ucraina non difende soltanto se stessa,
Today, Ukraine is not only defending itself, but is defending our peace, our freedom, and our security.
multilaterale
It's defending the multilateral order based on rules and laws that we have constructed with so many difficulties after the Second World War.
la solidarietà mostrata dagli italiani verso il popolo ucraino
Italy is extremely grateful, and the solidarity that have been shown by the Italians to the Ukrainian people is huge.
hanno inviato da subito verso l'Ucraina.
Help with sanitary things, food sent to Ukraine.
Detto, oltre 60.000 dall'inizio
I'm thinking about how we're welcoming so many refugees, and most of them are women and children.
e delle scuole
Italians have opened wide their doors to Ukrainian refugees with a sense that they are proud of our country.
Continueremo a farlo grazie al lavoro incessante.
And we will continue doing this, ultimately thanks to the work and the professionalism of our regions and our civil protections and ultimately our volunteers. Because in front of this uncivilized manners, Italy does not want to turn its head.
Il governo e il Parlamento sono in prima fila nel sostegno all'Ucraina.
The government and the Parliament of Italy are on the front line of support to Ukraine. We will offer financial help to Ukraine, and we have answered with the rest of our European partners to the request of the Ukrainian government of support and assistance against the Russian invasion, and we stand ready to do more. We have prepared special measures for minors without families who are coming here and to protect sick people who are fleeing. The majority of the opposition parties in this parliament have also shown conviction. In the decree that we approved last Friday, we have pledged new funds, financing, welcoming more Ukrainian citizens who are coming here. We want them not only to just find a house, but also to find a job and ultimately to integrate into our society, as we did with the 236,000 Ukrainians that have already been working in Italy for many years.
Le sanzioni che abbiamo concordato insieme ai nostri partner europei e del G7 hanno
The sanctions which we have agreed with our European partners have as an ultimate objective to push Russia to stop their war and sit down sincerely at the negotiating table. In the face of Russia that wanted us to be divided, we have shown a great deal of unity. So far, the sanctions have hit Russia very hardly. Russia and the personal assets of those who are quite close to President Putin have been hit. In Italy, we're also hitting the oligarchs who have been targeted by the wider European Union. We're about to adopt another energetic measure on energy to overcome our dependence on Russia's energy. And we want a roadmap to ultimately get Ukraine closer to Europe. It's been underlined how this process will continue in the last few weeks, and we will need huge institutional reforms. I want to say to President Zelensky, Italy is close to Ukraine in this process. Italy wants Ukraine in the European Union. When the horror and violence seems to have overwhelmed everything, this is the time that we must defend human rights and democratic values. And the people who are fleeing the war must be welcomed. Faced against the massacres and genocide, we must support the resistance.
Al crescente isolamento del presidente Putin dobbiamo opporre l'unità.
Faced against the growing isolation of President Putin, we have to show that the international community is unified. Ukraine has ultimately the right to be safe and democratic. Italy, our parliament, and all of our citizens are with President Zelensky of Ukraine. Thank you. If you're just joining us live now, that was Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, who was responding to an address by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to the Italian Parliament. In his address, he outlined his thanks for Italy's support and Italian support in not just taking refugees, but also in terms of enacting sanctions against Mr. Putin's regime and wider support of Ukraine.